Hi, this is Ana-Christina with Tools of Hope. Today I'm going to do a really quick recap of, are you hanging on by your fingernails? Is quarantine fatigue real? I have been teaming up with a colleague of mine who is a professional counselor. Her name is Barbra Russell. And we do these little classes on Friday mornings, or we have been doing for a month. And today the recording didn't go well. The recording of the live class didn't go well. The Facebook Live didn't go well. And it was user error due to learning, right? We're learning so many new things during this crisis. So I wanted to do a quick recap and get you the tools. Barbra shared two things that were critically important to understanding some of what's causing this fatigue. And some of what's causing it is grief, low-level grief. So an important thing to understand about grief is that one of the myths about grief is that it isn't just for death. We think of it as being just for when somebody dies, a loved one dies. And that can feel like 500 pounds parked on top of you. What's happening right now, though, with this crisis fatigue, with this quarantine fatigue, is that it's 500 one-pound weights. It's low-level stress. It is low-level anxiety carried for a long time. 500 pounds feels like 500 pounds. And wherever that grief is coming from, it's heavy. It's heavy. What we want to do is mitigate that. So what Barbra was talking about is just a quick refresher on the 5 stages of grief and kind of how it works. Number one, the first thing that people usually think about is denial. No, this can't happen to me. No, that couldn't have happened to her. How can this be happening? It's denial. Number 2, anger. You're ticked off, you're pissed off, you're angry, you're enraged that this happened, whatever it is that happened. Number 3, depression. You get really down and discouraged about it. Perhaps some hopeless feelings, helpless feelings. And then finally, that kind of stage of bargaining. You know what? If I can just get through this, then I will do this. If they could just get well, then I would do that. But really the final step you want to get to is acceptance. It happened, we process it, and we get to that acceptance piece where you find peace, P-E-A-C-E. Part of what Barbra mentioned was some of the myths that are regarding grief, that are all around grief and loss issues. Really what we're dealing with this quarantine fatigue is a lot of loss. We've lost our way of life, the way that we had it before. We've lost that normal, the strategies that we had and the schedules that we had and what we knew to be okay out in public. Everything has changed. And so she put together a list of typical myths that we can take a look at in a different way. The first one was, the pain will go away if I ignore it. I thought that was brilliant. So just by ignoring it and putting your head in the sand doesn't mean that the pain's going to go away. Resolving the reasons for the pain and going through the process will help the pain, but ignoring it by itself won't. The second myth is it's important to be strong. I have to be strong. I have to be strong for my kids. I have to be strong for my parents. I have to be strong at work. I have to be strong because I'm a leader. I have to be strong because I'm bringing in money into my house. Number 3, she said, I love this one that she said, there's a myth that if you don't cry, you don't care. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. I haven't heard it put that way. If you don't cry, you don't care. Meaning that people who are a little bit more emotional are looking at people who aren't as emotional and saying, you don't care. People who aren't as emotional are saying, I do care. I just care in a different way. So again, giving each other grace. What that brought up for me, incidentally, is there's a belief, if I don't worry, I don't care. If you insist on worrying as a way to care, you're going to be carrying a huge burden, aren't you? That worry creates that anxiety burden as well. The 4th myth and last myth that she brought up was that the amount of time means that you can stop grieving. In other words, you know what? That happened a year ago, get over it. That happened 6 months ago, get over it. That happened 2 years ago, get over it. She said it's really important to understand that people grieve differently and that there's a timeline on the grief and it's different for different people. What's important is to take a look and say, am I grieving in a healthy way? Whether it's the loss of a loved one, the loss of your job, the loss of your house, the loss of all the little tiny losses that pile up. What we wanted to do, though, is finish the session with some tools to be able to recognize it and then work toward resolving it. Some key symptoms for quarantine fatigue: irritability, stress, stressed out, anxious, more anxious than normal, eating more, eating less, sleeping more, sleeping less, unmotivated or less productive, having racing thoughts, you just can't stop your thoughts, and just on edge in general. I don't know about you, but I've noticed that with myself and my loved ones and people out in public. My question is always, how do we work with what's happening? How do we work with the reality, and how do we move forward? So I put together 3 steps, and they're R's, okay? 1, 2, 3. 1 is recharge and refresh. 2 is renew your mind. 3 is release. I'm going to hit these really hard and fast and we'll be done. Number 1, recharge and refresh. What are you doing intentionally to recharge and refresh? Number 2, renew your mind. Pay attention to what you're thinking. One of the things that happens a lot in my coaching is I'll ask the client, I'll say, what do you want? At least half the time, they will start making a list, or even a potential client or a friend or a family member have these conversations all the time. And at least half the time, they start a list of what they don't want. I don't want to be lonely anymore. I don't want to feel alone. I don't want to feel this hopelessness anymore. I don't want to feel the discouragement. I don't want to feel like I'm not worthy. And I'll let them kind of empty out a little bit, and then I'll say, what do you want? These are the things you don't want. So let's use those as stepping stones to move into what you do want, because that's what we want to take into the future. So the idea of renewing your mind is, what are you spending your time thinking about? And instead of thinking about the things you don't want, instead of thinking about the things that you're worried about, instead of thinking about the things that you can't change or can't control, what do you want? What can you change? What can you control? Which leads us to the 3rd step. Number 3, release. Intentionally let go of things that you can't control. We can do this with creativity, right? We can do this creatively. And one of the ways to do that is to intentionally let it go, to intentionally load it up in your hands, for example, and say, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about this, I've been really anxious about this, just to take that quiet time and to say, this has really been on my mind and it feels like 1,000 pounds on me. And when you're done emptying out, okay, good. Intentionally let it go. Intentionally imagine, for example, putting it into a garbage bag. Just put it into a garbage bag and say, I choose not to worry about this right now. There's nothing that I can do about it. Imagine what it sounds like to grab the garbage bag by the neck of the garbage bag, tie a knot in it or put a tie around it, and take it out to your front curb. Put it in the garbage can. Okay, it's kind of like a break state. The other way that you can break your state is, if you are in a bad state, kind of cycling downward, is you can do physical things to help yourself snap out of it, literally snap out of it. Whoa, that's going negative. What am I going to think about instead? The other thing that I do too is clapping, and just to say, gosh, I am not feeling good right now. I am in a crappy state of mind. My emotions are spinning. My thoughts are spinning. You know what? I'm going to break out of it. I'm going to break out of it. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Cheer yourself on. Just that few seconds helps you break that train that you were on and be able to get on another track. This is Ana-Christina. You can reach me through TOOLSOFHOPE.com. God bless you. God bless your loved ones. And bless the work of your hands. Talk to you later.